Wealth Dynasty. My name's Kurt Tucker.
I'm Mark Schmidt. If this is your first time tuning into us, this podcast is about how to generate wealth, different strategies of investments, insurance, and how you can develop that into generational wealth with your families.
Today we have with us Jerry Boggess, who's been a great friend. He comes from humble beginnings, rose to become the top executive of Tyco in the sprinkler business, and then was able to leverage that wealth to create commercial real estate holdings, which creates income for the family. He's been able to involve his family and created significant generational wealth that will be able to be passed on for many generations.
Yeah, Jerry Boggess truly started at the bottom, and now he's here. I'm excited. Not only been successful in corporate, but he's also been very successful as a family man, where he's taught his kids how to be successful in business, and even his grandkids. So, great leader, great example.
Yeah, I'm excited because I love the stories where people have come from humble beginnings, created something out of their own tools that they've been able to use in their lives. And not only that, not only for themselves, but have looked beyond themselves and created something for their families and for many, many people around them. So that kind of story really resonates with me because that's something that I personally would aspire to and desire that for my own family to do something great for them for generations. And we'll look at some of the tools he used, how insurance has played into part of that. And what we're looking for is to help others get a vision of what they can accomplish for themselves and their families.
So whether you're an entrepreneur or an executive or working your way up the corporate ladder, this episode is for you. There's going to be a lot of information where you can apply the things that Jerry's done through his life, become very, very wealthy and successful in his business and his family.
Let's dive in. Welcome back to Wealth Dynasty. We now have Jerry Boggess here, who's a wonderful friend, and we've known for many years, and just done many wonderful things here in the community. But we've invited him because he and his wife, Orcia, have done an amazing job in creating wealth for themselves, but not just for themselves, for their family. And we're going to talk a little bit how he's passing that on to the next generation, not just the money, but the values, what that means to him and his wife. So Jerry, let's just get started here. You started off in an amazing way, but let's talk about how real estate kind of fascinated you from a young age. What attracted you to you about that? And tell us a little bit about your story there.
Oh, I'm excited to be here today with you and to share some of my thoughts and feelings. And real estate, I grew up in a small rural town. My grandfather had a small farm. We lived on part of that small farm. And my other grandfather also had a small farm. And I noticed that the wealth in that community was based on real estate. If you owned land or had a farm, and then that was a form of wealth for the family. So I was interested, that just caught my eye, and that drove my interest. One grandfather had 3 duplexes and a rental house on a piece of property, so he had rentals and he had income, and I worked on that and helped him to do some maintenance, and we were always, renters moving in and out, and I noticed that process, and so all of that was kind of the very roots of my interest in real estate. And it was interesting, I would, the Sunday Tribune that would come in Utah where I grew up, it was a big thick newspaper, and it had a big monads, and they had the real estate section. So from a young age, I'd turn to the real estate section and look down there and look at all the prices per acre, what was for sale, and it was just an interest to see the comparisons.
Did you feel like those prices were expensive at that time? Like, what did you think?
They were what they were. And then I just noticed how they would always go up. The prices were trending up as time went on.
That's a great story. And it's amazing how from such a young age, you're able to observe that and process that and make it something that's part of your life. But let's move forward a little bit from that. And because you moved into the corporate world, and let's talk about that for a second. So you got involved in a major corporation and involved in mergers, acquisitions, and managing hundreds of thousands of people. Tell us a little more about that story, how you got involved there, what that meant to you, eventually how you pulled out of that and kind of went back to your roots.
I worked on a farm as a young man and learned a lot about life and prepared me for the corporate world. My grandfather, when I was 12 years old and was going to go on scout camp, I didn't know that I needed $13 to pay for scout camp. And he said, great, I'm going to pay you 20 cents an hour. And we're going to keep a timesheet and you're going to get paid as an employee. And that's part of, preparing for the corporate world. And when I worked a sufficient number of hours, he made a check out to the scout troop. And I went on that camp out as a 12-year-old. So that was a good experience. But he passed away when I was 14 years old, a couple of years later. And then the farm that he had and I was helping him with became a big part of my responsibility because my father had a day job and so he was working. And so it kind of fell to me. But my father said, okay, this will be your compensation. You'll get 2 acres. It was only about a 10-acre farm. We had other farm property away from this one, but this one was 2 acres. And he said, you'll have this 2 acres for your income. You can do whatever you want with it. Whatever you earn on this 2 acres will be yours, and that'll be your income for taking care of the whole farm. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do tomatoes. I'm going to put in 2 acres of tomatoes. And we had people that would drive by and they came to our house and they bought our apples and pears and berries and corn and tomatoes. And so we had customers that would come there that had been coming there for generations. And so we plowed the field and disked it and then laid out the furrows. And then I hired my sisters. I went down to the feed store and bought about 800 or 900 tomato plants, and we planted them all. And that was good. We ran the irrigation. We're in the desert, so we need irrigation water. And about 2 days later, a late frost came. Froze everything. All the plants were frozen. And so welcome to the world of entrepreneurship and being responsible. And so another $30 and another, hiring my sisters to plant all the tomatoes. So those kind of experiences were good. And then dealing with people and selling from there. And that prepared me for the corporate world. And after I got out of high school, I went to and found a job that was a friend of a friend who lined me up with this job, and it was in the fire sprinkler business. It was a construction job on the site installing fire sprinkler systems. And that was the start of my career, and I stayed in that throughout my career, as installing fire sprinklers.
So you started as a technician installing, doing all the work, and then just moved up by the company from there?
Yeah, actually the first day we were running a 8-inch cast iron line into the Linton building out by the Salt Lake Airport. 5 foot down in the trench, that's where I was at. The dust was blowing all over me, and I was bolting up the 8-inch lines that were going into there. And I knew I'd gone to work for a sprinkler company.
So you started at the very bottom, installing the sprinkler system, the alarm system, fire alarm systems?
That's correct. Yeah, my first day on the job was out of the Linton electronics plant out by the Salt Lake Airport, and we were running an 8-inch cast iron line into the building. And my job was to bolt up the lengths of pipe. So I was down in the trench, and the dust was blowing, and it was all blowing down on me. It was a pretty miserable day. And I said, now why are we running an 8-inch line in here? This is a huge parking lot. There's very little landscape. And he says, and the foreman on the job said, you didn't go to work for a lawn sprinkler company. You went to work for a fire sprinkler company. Oh, okay, fire sprinklers. So that's how I started out. I was very clueless from the start. then I ended up to be, the leader of the worldwide largest fire sprinkler company in the world. So that's an interesting beginning in that.
That's insane. Going from a technician or first day on the job in the actual trenches, going all the way up through, corporate. What are some lessons that you learned as you grew?
Well, as I worked part-time during school, working on a mechanical engineering degree at the University of Utah, and then working full-time in the summer for the fire sprinkler company. That was a great experience. I knew the business from installing the systems to designing the systems to selling the systems, and I had a good foundation in that. And so as time went on, I learned how to design them along with my engineering, and then learning how to sell them. And then about the time I was about ready to graduate, the manager went out and started his own company of that company I was working for. It was part of a bigger mechanical contractor. And so they asked me to stay on as the general manager. And I said, wow, that's great. And then so I was the general manager for a couple of years. Then we had a national company come in and wanted to open an office in Salt Lake City. And they approached me. I was working in a company where they were paying me 40% of all their profit. And I didn't have to invest anything. It was a sweetheart position. But I had worked there for about 8 years and thought, well, maybe there's more. I wanted to experience the big corporate world. So I quit and went to work for the big corporate world. And I quickly realized that, drawing upon my experiences in the trenches, so to speak, that the thing we needed to really focus on was being the first trade in, to getting all the pipe and the fittings and the people there on the job site before any other trades were there, before the air conditioning, the stud wall guy, the plumber, or the electrician. We'd be the first one. Then we'd make the most money and get it done the quickest. And so that I used that throughout my career in focusing on making the most money on the contracts that we would have.
Something you wouldn't have learned if you did go from the bottom all the way up.
Absolutely. It was a good training to have that from the grassroots up.
So let's switch back now. You did really well in the corporate world and big wealth for your family. You were able to leave the corporate world with a pretty good package, I think, and have a beautiful home in Boca, and then were able to invest that. Tell us about how you invested that, what your thoughts were at that time, and your goal, your what you had in mind long term.
I always loved real estate, and so I wasn't really a stocks and bond person, and I knew real estate, and I always wanted to invest in real estate. The very first real estate deal I did was I just barely out of high school. And there was a salesman selling lots down in southern Utah for resorts near a projected reservoir that was coming in. $15 down, $15 a month. And across the street, the manager of the service station, the Phillips service station, bought 2 lots. And I had a lot of respect for him. So I thought, oh, this is my chance for $15 to own real estate. And so I signed up for it, and I paid for that for a number of years. Then I went down and checked it out, and it was nothing. They hadn't developed anything. There was a barbed wire fence with a sign on it, a rusty sign, it says Navajo Land Development, and I owned one of the lots out there in the desert. It was nothing. So it was a total bust, the first investment. But the next one, right after we got married, and we bought 12 acres of land in the mouth of Little Cottonwood Canyon. It was right up, nice area. And it was $127.75 a month, and we paid $1,500 down. It was $18,000. And we said, okay, well, basically we decided that we would just buy some real estate, and, instead of making car payments, we'll drive old cars and make real estate payments. But then a few years later, we sold that, and we took $150,000 out of that deal and went and reinvested in a couple of homes. One home was next to a home I had bought earlier that we were doing. We were buying up some homes. It was in a good area for apartments. And the other one was a home that was near my dad's home. And then the other one was, there was there was a warehouse. There was 4 warehouses of 10,000 each. It was about 40,000 square feet. And the economy was not good at the time, and somebody had developed it, and they couldn't make the payments on it. So it was going back to the lender. So I went to the investors and said that, here, I'll give you some money now. I'll give you the rest of the money in 5 years when I refinance it. And I signed to take over that mortgage. And that was a bit of a risk. And I remember the conversation with my wife, Portia. I said, honey, we're buying an $850,000 warehouse. We live in a $40,000 home. But if we're successful, it'll be good. If we're not successful, we really haven't lost much of anything anyway, because if we lose everything, we don't have a lot. But that was our attitude. Let's just do it. And then every month they would call us, the property manager would call us and say, okay, we're this much short. You got to send money to make up the payment. And we did that. And I was doing good in my corporate job and getting some good bonuses. And so we used that money to make the payments. We still own that warehouse today, and it's worth at least $200 a square foot. We paid $20 a square foot, so it's probably worth $8 million, and plus. And so it's just produced rental income. It's a lot of small tenants in these 10,000 foot buildings, and it's in a good location. And every 10 years, when the mortgage comes due, we refinance it and pull out some more money, but then it keeps cash flowing each month. So that's kind of the model that I've looked at for real estate. If you can get rentals and you get the revenue coming in to make the payments, and then inflation will take the value up. The payments stay the same with the insurance company, but then rental payments, you're able to increase the rental payments and the cash flow. And so it's just a model that we tried to use.
That's a great strategy. So what advice would you give, to anybody that's looking to get into an investment like that in maybe a down market? Is that still a good time to get into commercial or make a risk like that in their life, whether it's starting a business or anything? What's your thoughts on that?
Yes, you always want to keep your eyes open and where your interests are, and then just look for those opportunities. And right now, we're coming in from a cycle of business. So we've had good business. Business has been good. There's been a big demand for warehouses, and typically construction always overbuilds. If you need apartments, they build too many apartments. If they need warehouses, they build too many warehouses. So we're kind of in a little bit of an overbuilt situation nationally. And so you can kind of look around and see if there's anybody that's in trouble, because there's more vacancy now than what there was 3 or 4 years ago, when everybody jumped in and said, oh, there's a good demand, let's all build. And then there's not enough tenants to fill them all up. So there may be a little bit of an opportunity. It's just an example of something to look for. But if you can tie up a piece of property with income and let that income pay the payments, and then over time, value will grow and value will grow. It's a slower growth. It's not like buying Apple stock when it first comes out, but it's just a good, steady investment. And over time, it's a good investment for estate planning to pass on to the next generation, because it's a recurring revenue. And the family has a hard time to mess up a real estate that's being rented out. If you have a business and you turn it over to the next generation, they can mess it up. But if you have real estate, it's less likely to get messed up by the next generation, who maybe, they're not as sharp, or they're not decided, or they're not engaged in the business.
Part of the reason of the wealth, of course, is how you support your family, how you bless your family, how you help them. So tell us how you've involved your family and how this is helping them, or future generations, and how you envision that.
Okay, so in my corporate world, I was able to get good bonuses and buy property and buy other warehouses and buy raw ground. And my oldest son graduated in mechanical engineering, got a master's degree. He likes real estate, he likes construction. And our youngest son graduated in accounting from BYU, and he's just got a master's degree in real estate, an MBA from Duke University. And so the two of them are working together in our business. and taking the raw ground, developing it, and managing the other tenants. We have over 300 tenants. We're always turning over and renewing leases, and there's a lot of repairs and maintenance and strategies in that business. And it's great to have the sons come into that and work in that business with me.
And what about, do you have any kids that are not at all interested in the business, or they just decided to go a different direction? What did that look like?
Okay, we have 3 sons, and the middle son studied medicine. He's a doctor at Duke University, a professor, and so he has his medical practice, and he participates in some ownership, but he really doesn't participate in the day-to-day.
I mean, you could get into commercial real estate for doctor offices or something.
That's right. That's right. But he's not in the day-to-day management.
And from an early age, how did you prepare your children to be ready for this sort of responsibilities?
We had grandpa work days at the warehouses when we lived in California. We would drive up to Utah for a weekend or a week, and then we'd take a day or two and say, okay, this is work day, grandpa's work day. And then we'd all go out, and I'd check with our sons and see what properties were being turned over. Are there some that we got to go in and scrub the toilets, clean everything up, and sweep everything up, and there's some landscaping that needs to be done. And then we'd work on those warehouses and cleaning them up between tenants. And that was a good experience for them to get a feel for what the business was about.
One quick question is that, here in the Wealth Dynasty, we're in the life insurance business. How have you, if you've had some life insurance policies, how has that helped you and your family?
Well, it's been good in that when I was younger, we had a big term policy, and that gave us confidence that if something happened, that we'd be taken care of there. And so that's been good.
I think you had a significant policy from the corporate world as well.
That's right.
How did that work out for you? How's that?
No, that was good. That was the thing that really
gave us confidence in knowing that was there for us and our family, because of taxes and everything else that's involved at the time of death.
Going back a few years, I remember you had a variable life insurance policy that was purchased by the company for your benefit. For you, it insured both you and your wife, and was really an estate tax play, if you will. In other words, there's a policy that was designed to create liquid cash, not subject to any kind of estate tax. And of course, 10 years ago, the estate tax was much higher than it is now, or the amount of money that was taxed was substantially different than it is now. But tell us about how you use that policy, how you use it as a piece of property, you manipulate it to your benefit, and change it around to fit current needs.
Yes, and so we had that policy, and we looked at it, and my wife and I, neither one of us were on any meds, we were healthy, and we looked at the projection. And the projection was that it was going to go down in value as we went forward, possibly to time out, that we may live longer than what the policy was for. So then we said, okay, we took the cash value that was there and bought a fixed policy so that we would have a payout whenever we die. And we have that now, and that's there. And it's a tax-free payout, which is the benefit.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks. Thanks for sharing that with us. That's great.
that was a good move to do that before you got. I mean, there is a cutoff with the age.
That's right. So you did it while you're in good health. Yeah. Okay. Well, it was still doable. Yeah. Okay. Right. As opposed to waiting too long where you can't do it anymore and, suffer the consequences of all that money went to the policy. They could have gone to zero and had no value. Yeah. But you took action and used your property appropriately.
Yeah. And it's good that people have that option to be able to make those decisions with that.
So let's kind of tie it back together and let's look forward a few generations. I know at one time we had a conversation, Jerry, that you kind of noticed that in one of your grandchildren or a couple of grandkids, it dawned on them they might get some wealth at some point in their future. And you noticed there might have been a change in their thinking. And have you thought about that? And how have you addressed that?
Well, it's hard to do what you do in raising your children if you have wealth and not have them aware of it, because we enjoyed traveling. And so the 25 of our family, we've gone to China, we've gone to Israel, we've gone to South Africa, we've gone to Southeast Asia, where we will be gone for 10 days just as a family. And our grandchildren have traveled in most cities and countries in Europe. And so it's, you want to do that because that's been one of the highlights of the relationship within our family, to keep our family together. And but to do it, it takes money to do that. And they're aware, they're smart enough to know that, there's some money there, and they hear what's going on. And so it is what it is. We encourage them to work hard and to set goals and go to the university, and all of them are doing that now. We have 16 grandchildren, and we're down to the last 3 that are still in high school, but the rest of them are either graduated from the university or in the university. So we feel good about.
So education's been a big part of your family legacy.
Yeah.
Have you helped your grandchildren in education? What's their
parents have taken care of that.
Some of them have worked. Most of them have had jobs either in the summer or during the year. They're high energy. They want to have some jobs. They want to be doing things, and so I've just seen a pattern where a couple of them work at the MTC, and they work over in another department at the University of BYU. Most all of them have gone to the University of BYU University, except for the one that's going to UVU. And so they've all been there, and it's been a great experience for them. But they're willing to work. Our sons, when we moved to headquarters in New Hampshire, when our oldest son was on his mission, our middle son was a freshman at BYU, and our youngest son was in high school, we moved from Los Angeles to Hampton Beach, New Hampshire. And I'm thinking, oh, nobody's going to come back here. There's no decision. There's no reason to come back. We're going to be out here by ourselves. So I said, okay, we'll start a business so the kids can run the business. So we went down to Hampton Beach in the middle of the winter, closed down, freezing cold. And I asked a local there, where is the busiest spot on the beach? And he said, and he showed me where it was on this big walkway right across from the beach and in front of this big casino. And he said, right here's the busiest spot on the beach. So he got the landlord, and I said, how much will it be to rent this much of this sidewalk right here? And he said, $18,000. I said, okay, good, we'll rent it. So we ran some sewer over there and some water lines, and we made it into a frozen yogurt stand right there. And so the 3 sons worked there while they were going to college. And when they got married, our new daughter-in-laws came out and worked in the business. They had about 20 employees they were doing. And they also opened a Mexican taco stand right next to it. And they were growing the business. So it was about a $200,000 business. They had about 20 employees. They had to deal with all the government agencies. So they learned more running that business than they did at the university, listening to professors out of professors. So it's a great experience to create that opportunity for them to do that.
So a lot of people, wealthy people, they want to benefit their kids, but they don't want to create delinquents. That's one word to say it. They don't want to hurt their kids with too much money. That's right. Okay. And so what would be just a couple of bullet points? What would be your best advice to help people prepare their kids to manage well?
Okay. It takes time. You need to spend time with your children. And if you're wealthy and you've got a lot of responsibilities and you can hire things done or you can send them off to do this, you need to really spend time. It's the most important asset we have is our time, and we need to spend it. And it reminds me of a story in Boca Raton. There was a doctor. So he fired his landscape people, and he had a couple of sons. And so he'd go out and work in the yard every Saturday with his sons, even though he was busy delivering babies all the rest of the time. But it was so important to him to spend time with his sons. And so that was a great example. Some of the neighbors thought he had fallen on hard times when he got rid of his landscaper, but no, he was just out there working and his sons, and he knew that was a job that needed to be done, and he just lived in a development, so it was a way to do that.
Well, I think we've got some great insight today.
Yeah.
Anything you want to comment?
Yeah, I guess I do have a question. If you were going to do this all over again, what would you do differently?
Probably journal. Do a better job of keeping a journal. I'm not a great writer, but I wish I would have done a better job of keeping a journal.
Well, the great news is your kids can see this podcast as many times as they want.
Okay, that'd be great.
That's good. Yep. Nowadays we have video journals, so.
Well, we appreciate you coming today, and grateful for your wife being here too, even though she hasn't been on camera. She's been a huge support to you over the years. Without her, and none of this would have happened.
Absolutely.
She is the center and strength. And when her counsel, I learned early on, when she had an opinion that has a counsel, I need to listen because she's right.
Okay. We've all learned some great lessons here, and I'm thinking of some things I need to be doing a little bit better. So thank you so much for this time today. And we'll go ahead and finish up. So thank you so much, Jerry.
Hey, you're right. Say hi. Great to you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
That was incredible. I'm just gonna say that was crazy. He started so humble, such a whole beginning. He saw an opportunity. He saw something that interested him, piqued his interest. And what I really like is it doesn't matter what you go into. It just has to be something that you're interested in, and you go all in with it. And you leverage, and you get your family support. He mentioned that his wife supported him through all the years of, and they made decisions together. That's incredible. I think lots of good stuff there.
Yeah, I love the way he was able to observe the world around him, look at what was working, look at opportunities. He had a couple of bad investments, which that's going to happen to everybody.
Luckily, that one was only $15.
Well, when he recovered from it, and he had he lost the tomato crop, that was a big blow. That's a very discouraging thing, but he didn't give up, just turned around and got right back on again. Also like the way that, and since we're the life insurance business, I like the way that he had a life insurance policy. He used it as a piece of property. He used it to the benefit of his family, was able to get good advice and make changes as needed. And he also did it while he was in good health. So he was smart enough to realize that those things have to be done while you're in good health.
Correct. Wow, we sure got a lot from that. What was your favorite part? If there's anything that you want to share or that really stood out to you, send us an email. Also, if you are interested in finding out any more information, financial information, on how to build your wealth, use different strategies, including life insurance as a properties, reach out. All of our information is down here in the links.
We have some great guests lined up over the next few weeks and some great topics that we know you're gonna find interesting and helpful as you build your own wealth dynasty.